The petals came down like pink snow. Outside the Grand Magnolia Hotel's east terrace, a harbor gust sent cherry blossoms spiraling across the stone railing and across the shoulders of people who had paid too much for champagne and too little attention to anyone below their tax bracket. Dr. Adrian Cole stood at the terrace railing with a glass he hadn't touched, watching the city skyline go dark one window at a time. He had been here 40 minutes. He had spoken to no one except a waiter named Marcus, who had offered him the champagne and received a polite nod in return. The wedding was his cousin's. The cousin was 26 and giddy with it, already on the dance floor while the band played something with too much violin. Adrian had watched for exactly as long as courtesy required, then retreated here, to the terrace, where the air smelled of flowers and salt water. He knew what waited inside. His mother, Margaret Cole, had been working the room since 7 o'clock with the precision of someone who had organized a hospital wing fundraiser and raised $4 million before the entrees arrived. She had already introduced him to 2 women this evening, a cardiologist from Tufts and a patent attorney with a family compound on the vineyard, and both times he had excused himself with the same quiet, practiced deflection. He was 34 years old. He was tired. Lily had asked him, before he left the house, whether parties were fun. She was 5 years old, in pajamas printed with small yellow ducks, her hair still damp from her bath. Sometimes, he had said honestly, she had considered this with the gravity of someone weighing a significant philosophical question. More fun than our movie nights? No. Nothing is more fun than our movie nights. She seemed satisfied. His housekeeper, Diane, had given him a look over Lily's head that said, "Go, she will be fine. Stop hovering." So he had gone, and he was here, on a terrace in April, watching cherry blossoms fall into a city that did not know his name, and doing a passable impression of a man who had somewhere to be. He heard the voice before he turned. "I don't want any trouble. Please let go." The tone was low and controlled, the voice of someone managing fear with careful hands. The man gripping her wrist was broad-shouldered and flushed in the specific way of someone 3 drinks past his limit. The woman was young, in a dress the color of deep water and wrong shoes for this crowd. She held a small notepad. She was not a guest. Adrian set his untouched champagne on the nearest table and crossed the terrace in 6 unhurried steps. "Excuse me," he said. The man assessed him briefly and decided to hold his ground. "We're having a private conversation. I can see that." Adrian shifted his stance, putting himself between them without theater. "I'm also wondering how my wife is doing." A half-second of silence. The woman's eyes found his, brown, very still, very sharp. Something in her expression passed through surprise and landed somewhere harder. She took 1 step toward him. "I was looking for you," she said. Her voice did not waver. Her free hand found his arm. The drunk man released her wrist. Adrian turned. The woman turned with him. They walked together through the glass doors into the light and noise, neither speaking until they reached the far side of the room, behind a column wrapped in white ribbon, where the noise dropped by half. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome." She looked at his hand, which had moved from her arm. "I'm not your wife." "No," he agreed. "You're not." Her name was Evelyn Parker. She taught 2nd grade at Whitmore Elementary in Cambridge and supplemented her income with freelance pieces for a lifestyle magazine that had given her press access in exchange for 3 photographs and 800 words on the centerpiece installations. Adrian told her his name and watched her not recognize it, which was the most refreshing thing that had happened to him all year. They found a quieter corner near the bar. Evelyn ordered club soda. Adrian ordered nothing. "How long have you been teaching?" he asked. 6 years. She turned the glass slowly. "I like it." Most people who like their jobs don't say it that plainly. Most people perform when they talk about work. "I'm not interested in that." He was about to respond when he saw, over her shoulder, his mother crossing the room with someone in tow blonde, articulate-looking, wearing the cautious optimism he had seen on the 2 previous women this evening. Margaret Cole moved through rooms the way good surgeons moved through hospitals, with quiet purpose, adjusting trajectory without breaking stride. She had spotted him. She was 15 feet away. "I need to ask you something," Adrian said. Evelyn turned slightly, followed his gaze, then turned back. Her expression was neutral and attentive. "Pretend to be my wife," he said. She stared at him. "I'm sorry? My mother is about to introduce me to someone. I've been introduced to 3 women tonight, and I'd like it to stop." He kept his voice even. "I'll explain the rest later. I just need 30 seconds. You want me to?" "Evelyn." His mother's voice arrived. Margaret Cole was 61, silver-haired, and carried the authority of a woman who had spent 3 decades on hospital boards and charity committees. She looked at Evelyn with the measuring warmth of someone who had learned to be pleasant first and evaluate second. Adrian took Evelyn's hand. A small gesture, practiced and smooth, communicating volumes while committing to nothing. He felt her hand go briefly still, then relax. "Mom," he said, "you haven't met Evelyn." Margaret's eyes moved from her son's face to Evelyn's face to their joined hands, completing the circuit in under 2 seconds. "I haven't," she said carefully. "My wife," Adrian said. The word stayed in the air between them. Margaret's expression registered not shock but a swift, recalibrating stillness, the stillness of someone who has been waiting for particular information and has now received it in an unexpected form. "Your wife," she said. Evelyn's hand did not tighten in his. She looked at his mother with composed, friendly warmth that would have taken him a week to manufacture, and she had produced in 4 seconds flat. "It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Cole," Evelyn said. Behind Margaret, the blonde woman had already begun recalibrating her evening. They escaped at 10:15 onto a narrow balcony overlooking the hotel garden, where the cherry trees were lit from beneath, their blossoms glowing faintly gold in the upward light. "Your mother cried," Evelyn said. "Briefly. She called someone while we were talking to the Hendersons. She was telling my aunt. They've been competing over my personal life for 9 years. Evelyn turned to look at him. Her expression was suspended between anger and amusement in a way that felt distinctly judicial. "What did we just do?" she said. "We told approximately 40 people that we're married, including 2 cousins, a former hospital board chair, and a man named Gerald who will tell everyone he knows by morning." "Great," she said. "That's great. I can manage it. If you're willing." She looked at the lit trees. A petal drifted past the railing, slow and gold. They left the Grand Magnolia at 10:30 and walked 3 blocks to a bar called the Aldersham, where the lighting was warm and no one watched either of them with particular interest. Adrian ordered bourbon. Evelyn ordered tea, then changed her mind and ordered bourbon too. "You should know," she said, when the drinks arrived, "that I almost said no. You didn't get the chance," he corrected. She acknowledged this with a small tilt of her head. "What happens now?" He had been thinking about it for 30 minutes. The outline was clear to him in the way surgical plans were clear, not comfortable, but precise. "My mother will want to meet with you. Have meals, ask questions, organize something. She's been trying to find me a wife for 4 years because she believes Lily needs a mother and I need a partner. And she cannot tolerate situations she can't resolve. She means well. She simply cannot leave things alone. And you want me to keep pretending? For a period of time, yes." She looked at him directly. Not aggressive, not deferential, simply present. The same quality of attention he had noticed on the terrace. "What do I get out of this?" she said. It was, he thought, exactly the right question. They met the next morning at Bloomfield Cafe on Exeter Street, a narrow place with small tables and windows that looked out on a park where tulips had come up overnight in thick red rows. Evelyn was already there when he arrived, a coffee and a green-covered notepad on the table in front of her. "I've been thinking about your situation," she said, without preamble. "So have I. Your mother will want sustained contact. Consistency. Whatever arrangement you're proposing has to be coherent." She folded her hands on the table. "How long?" "A year," he said. "Long enough to be credible. We would appear together at required events, hospital galas, family occasions, anything significant. At the end of the year, we separate quietly. Incompatibility. No drama. Where would I live? I have a penthouse in the Back Bay. 7 bedrooms. You would have your own suite, your own entrance code, full privacy. There would be no obligation beyond public appearances. I have a job. I'm not asking you to leave it. She looked at the tulips for a moment. Something moved in her expression, not quite reluctance, not quite resolve. My mother has Alzheimer's, she said. Early stage, but progressing. She's at Meadowfield, which is decent, but the memory care unit she would benefit from most is Harborview Cognitive Care at Mass General. The cost is beyond what I can reach. She said it without apology and without performance. A fact, clearly stated. I can cover it, he said. For the duration of the arrangement and 1 year following. That is not a negotiating position. It's the offer. She looked at him. There's a condition, she said. Name it. She met his eyes. No falling in love. Simply, without irony. The moment either of us develops real feelings, the contract ends. We talk, we resolve it cleanly. I've seen what happens when people confuse a situation for a relationship. I'm not interested in going through that. He looked at her across the small table with the green notebook and the coffee she had let go cold. Agreed, he said. They shook hands. Outside, the tulips held their red against the April wind. Evelyn arrived on a Saturday with 2 suitcases and a large bag of books. Diane, Adrian's housekeeper, a composed woman in her 50s who had been briefed on the situation and received it without visible surprise, showed her to the East Suite and left her to settle. She stood in the middle of the room. Cream walls, a bed that looked designed to defeat insomnia, windows facing the harbor, and a reading chair by the window that she had not asked for and would use every day. She was unpacking when she heard a sound from the hallway, small feet, deliberate and then a knock. 3 times, very precise. The girl in the doorway was small and serious-faced, with her father's dark eyes and a way of holding herself that suggested she had decided to assess this situation thoroughly before committing to any response. She wore a shirt with an octopus on it and held a paperback A Cricket in Times Square with the cover facing out. I'm Lily, she said. Hello, Lily. I'm Evelyn. Lily looked at the suitcase, then the books on the bed, then Evelyn. I do. I have a lot of books too. She stepped partially into the room. Dad said you're a teacher. I'm in kindergarten. My teacher doesn't let us read chapter books during silent time. Only leveled readers. A pause waited with editorial opinion. I already finished all the leveled readers. In October, she held up the paperback. I don't understand why Chester doesn't just go home if he wants to go home. Do you want to talk about it? Evelyn said. Lily came all the way into the room and sat in the reading chair. Because she had apparently decided the reading chair was the obvious place for this conversation, and Evelyn found herself unable to disagree. They talked about Chester the cricket for 20 minutes. Lily had opinions sharp and specific, delivered with the confidence of someone who had been reading seriously for 2 years and trusted the conclusions she drew. When Adrian appeared in the doorway, looking for his daughter with the mild alarm of a parent who has learned that silence from a 5-year-old requires investigation, he found Evelyn cross-legged on the floor with Lily in the chair above her, both of them engaged in an argument about whether Chester's decision in Chapter 7 was brave or simply confused. Dad, Evelyn thinks Chester is confused but also brave at the same time. Is that allowed? I think so, he said. Lily returned to her book, satisfied. Adrian looked at Evelyn. She looked back. Something passed between them that neither named and both noted. Then Lily turned a page, and the moment dissolved, and the evening continued. Margaret Cole chose Spring Garden Bistro in Beacon Hill, where the garden terrace opened in good weather, and the lilac at the corner was in full bloom, and entirely indifferent to the weight of the conversation happening beneath it. Evelyn arrived 3 minutes early. Margaret was already there. In person, she was more formidable than she had seemed at the wedding, not loudly, but in the settled way of someone who had spent decades in rooms where things were decided and had developed an accurate sense for when something was not what it appeared to be. She stood and offered both hands, which was warm. Then she looked at Evelyn with a directness that was something else entirely. They ordered. Margaret asked about Evelyn's family carefully, without pressing. Evelyn's father had worked in county planning. Her mother had taught piano. Western Connecticut, small town, ordinary beginnings. The cover story that they had met at the Children's Hospital annual fundraiser 8 months ago and kept things private while determining how Lily would respond held. Evelyn delivered it with the ease of something that could have been true. He was standing by himself near the coat check, Evelyn said. Looking at his phone, the coat check attendant seemed more interested in the party than he did. Margaret's expression shifted. Not suspicion. Recognition. That sounds exactly right, she said, quietly. They ate. The conversation moved through family. Lily, Margaret's years on the hospital board. When Evelyn mentioned her mother's illness briefly, without theater, Margaret received it with genuine attention. That was not what Evelyn had expected. The Harborview program is excellent, Margaret said. I'm glad she'll have access to it. Toward the end of the meal, Margaret set down her coffee cup. I want to tell you something. Evelyn waited. Adrian has been carrying Lily alone for 5 years. He has done it well, better than most people could. But there is a kind of careful that becomes a wall, and I have watched him build it, and I have been trying for 4 years to find a way through it. She looked directly at Evelyn. I don't know yet what your marriage is, but I know what my son's face looked like at that wedding, and I haven't seen that expression in a long time. She picked up her cup. I'm not asking you to explain anything. I'm just telling you what I saw. Evelyn drove home with the windows down, thinking about a man who had built a wall and a woman who was not supposed to care about it either way. The hospital gala was held the 3rd week of April. Evelyn wore a borrowed navy dress and decided, in the elevator going up, that she was not going to pretend to be someone she had never been. You don't need to, Adrian said. I'm already pretending to be your wife. That's different. He looked straight ahead at the elevator doors. You know how to be in a room. You pay attention to people. You remember what they say. You make them feel understood rather than interrogated. Most people in that room have just had more practice pretending they don't need it. What followed was 3 hours of the specific social endurance these events required. The circulation, the introductions, the particular register needed when speaking to a hospital chief of staff versus a senior donor versus a junior resident, trying not to look nervous. Adrian moved through it efficiently. Evelyn moved through it differently. She stopped when someone said something interesting. She asked follow-up questions. She listened. Dr. Renata Walsh, the chief of cardiac surgery, found Evelyn near the dessert table at 9 o'clock and spent 20 minutes talking about communicating medical risk to families with young children because Evelyn had asked a question most people at these events never thought to ask. Your wife, Dr. Walsh told Adrian afterward, has better instincts than half my residents. He looked across the room to where Evelyn was talking to a pediatric nurse named Cora, both of them laughing at something. Yes, he said. She does. Later, driving home along the river, the water dark and the city lights blurred on its surface, Evelyn said. Dr. Walsh is lonely. He glanced at her. She's the best surgeon in the building, and everyone is slightly afraid of her. She misses having a real conversation. That's why she talked to me. I wasn't afraid of her. You're right, he said. I'm usually right about people. She said it without arrogance, as simple information. It's one of the things I'm good at. He kept his eyes on the road. I know, he said. Lily's Sunday morning pancakes were not negotiable. Evelyn discovered this on her 3rd Sunday in the penthouse, coming into the kitchen at 8 o'clock to find Adrian at the stove and Lily on a step stool at the counter, adding blueberries to a bowl of batter with a seriousness of purpose that suggested this task was not decorative. We're making pancakes, Lily said, without looking up. You can do the maple syrup when they're ready, but only a little at a time or it makes everything wet. Noted, Evelyn said. Adrian glanced over his shoulder. Gray sweater, unshaved. He looked, in this light and context, like a different version of the man at the hospital gala, more specific, more actual. Coffee's made, he said. She poured herself a cup and leaned against the counter. The kitchen was warm and smelled of butter. The harbor was silver in the east window. Lily was explaining the precise science of blueberry distribution. Evelyn stood there holding her coffee and felt, briefly, completely disoriented. They ate at the kitchen table. Lily talked about a book she had started, a girl who found a stray dog which she considered urgent. Adrian listened and responded and occasionally said exactly the right thing in exactly the right number of words. Evelyn watched him with his daughter and thought, "This is what he is when no one is watching." Careful and precise in his affection the same way he was precise about everything else, each thing given in the amount that was needed and no more. After breakfast, Lily went to the living room to read. The sound of pages turning came faint through the doorway. Adrian washed the dishes. Evelyn dried them. The arrangement had happened without discussion, a week ago, and neither had changed it. "She asked me yesterday," Evelyn said, setting a plate on the stack. He was quiet for a moment. "What did you say?" "I said I thought you were. I wasn't sure if that was true." He handed her another plate. "Why did you say it then?" "Because she needed to hear something solid. Children that age carry their parents' emotional weather. She's been watching you for signs for a long time." He handed her the last plate. He looked at the window. "I'm not unhappy. I haven't been unhappy for a while. I just stopped expecting certain things." "What kind of things?" He turned off the tap. "The kind it doesn't help to expect." She folded the dish towel. "That's a very careful answer." "I know," he said. The morning held. It was a Tuesday evening in late May when Evelyn first understood that something had changed. She had stayed late at Whitmore Elementary to help a student named Daniel, 7 years old, struggling for 6 weeks with a reading block. His previous teachers had classified as a motivation problem, and she had classified as a decoding issue, requiring specific, patient work. They had worked for an hour after the other students left. By the end of it, Daniel had read 3 pages of a book he had chosen himself, and his expression, when he finished, was one of the things that made the work worthwhile. She drove toward her apartment. She drove past her street. She arrived at the Back Bay building and took the elevator up and found the kitchen warm and dinner already made and Lily asleep on the couch with a book folded open on her chest. Adrian was at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and a patient file. He looked up when she came in and said, simply, "Long day." "Good one," she said. "One of my students read independently for the first time." He set the file down. "Tell me." So she did. She sat across from him at the kitchen table and told him about Daniel and the decoding work and the expression on his face at the end. And Adrian listened the way he listened to everything completely, without interrupting, with attention that did not feel like courtesy but like genuine interest. "You're good at this," he said, when she finished. "At teaching? At caring about the right things," he said. She looked at him across the table. There was no particular event to point to. Just a Tuesday evening and a cup of tea and the sound of Lily's breathing from the next room, and the way he had set down his file and looked at her like she was worth listening to, and the fact that she had driven past her own street without thinking. She thought about the clause, no falling in love. She had agreed without hesitation. It had seemed, at Bloomfield Cafe with the tulips outside and the green notebook on the table, like the simplest and most sensible thing either of them had said. She still thought it was sensible. She had simply stopped being certain she could enforce it. She had not told him this. But she had spent enough time watching him to know that something had shifted in the small, unnecessary attentions. The lamp in her suite adjusted without being asked. The morning coffee left on the counter because he had learned, without her telling him, that she needed 15 minutes of quiet before she could form coherent sentences. These were not things that came from obligation. She knew that. She was good at reading people. She had said so herself. She left that evening citing papers to grade, which was true and also convenient. She drove to her apartment and sat in her own kitchen and graded the papers and thought about a clause and a man who had built a wall and whether the wall was still there. She thought it probably wasn't. She was not yet sure what to do about that. The announcement party was held on a Saturday at the end of May in Margaret Cole's house in Chestnut Hill, which had a garden that could accommodate 200 people and a catering staff deployed with the same organizational precision Margaret brought to everything she loved. String lights hung in the old oak trees. Peonies were everywhere, white, full, blooming for exactly this brief window of the year and smelling like something from a world where everything was fine. Evelyn stood near the rose hedge with a glass of water she hadn't drunk and felt the particular quality of a situation that had outgrown its original shape. She had prepared for tonight as performance. She had reviewed the story with Adrian that morning at the kitchen table, while Lily argued that Saturdays should provisionally also include pancakes. But standing here in the garden, with the string lights coming on as the sun went down and 200 people who believed in something that had started as a convenience, she felt the performance receding and something else rising to take its place. Adrian found her by the rose hedge at 8:15. He had been circulating for an hour and moved through it the same way he moved through everything efficiently, slightly apart from the center of things. He stood beside her and looked at the garden. "Your mother gave a speech," Evelyn said. "I know. I heard part of it. She talked about Lily, about what these past weeks have meant to her." He was quiet. Across the garden, Lily sat on a low stone wall with two older cousins, explaining something from a book she had brought in her jacket pocket with the patient authority of someone who had strong feelings about the text. The cousins looked engaged. "I want to tell you something," Adrian said. She turned to look at him. His expression was the one she had come to recognize as the expression before he said something true. The brief settling, the way his attention gathered and went very still. "I agreed to your clause," he said, "and I've been intending to honor it." A pause. "I'm not certain I've succeeded." The string lights moved in the oak trees. A petal from the rose hedge drifted between them and fell. "Adrian, let me finish." He turned to face her. "I know what this was. I know what we agreed, and I'm not asking for anything." He stopped. "I just don't want to stand in front of 200 people and say things I don't mean when the true version is available." "What's the true version?" she said. "That the last 6 weeks have been the first time in a long time that I've come home and not felt like I was managing something." He said it simply, without drama. "That Lily asks for you. That I understand why." He looked at her directly. The garden was very loud and very far away. She thought about the tulips at Bloomfield Cafe and the clause in her green notebook. She thought about Daniel reading 3 pages and Adrian setting down his file. She thought about Sunday morning pancakes and the reading chair and the harbor silver in the east light. "I came past my street because I wanted to come here." She had known this for 3 weeks. She had been grading papers about it instead of doing anything. "Mine too," she said. Not a long sentence, not a dramatic one. But it said what was true, plainly and without performance, which was the only way she knew how to say things. Adrian looked at her. Across the garden, Margaret Cole watched from beside the catering table with an expression that was, at its core, simply relief. Lily looked up from her book, assessed the situation in the competent way of someone who had been paying attention, and returned to her reading. The clause was dissolved. The contract was over. What came after would not be managed or arranged or organized against the possibility of loss. It would simply be what it was, imperfect and present, and, for the first time in a long time, not built to survive without feeling. The peonies held their white against the evening. The oak trees moved. The party went on entirely unaware that the most important thing at the party had already happened. Quietly, beside the rose hedge, between 2 people who had agreed not to fall in love and had managed, in the end, to be completely honest about their failure. Some things cannot be contracted against. Some things arrive quietly, in the middle of ordinary Tuesdays and Sunday mornings, in borrowed reading chairs and kitchen conversations, and the specific way a man sets down his work to listen. Evelyn Parker had spent 6 years teaching children that the words on the page were not the story, that the story was what you understood once you had read the words and put the book down. She had understood that, for a while now, she had simply needed to stop grading papers long enough to say it out loud, beside a rose hedge in May, to a man who had been waiting without knowing he was waiting for someone willing to mean what she said.